maybe a bit of an odd question, but what if I'm too pessimistic to even set goals in the first place? Um, depends on how pessimistic you think you are. Do you think you're just a little pessimistic, like by yourself, or do you think you're pessimistic, like clinical pessimistic, like you actually might need a psychologist or medication? Because there's a big difference in the approach you take. Basically, if you think you might be clinical, then the best thing to do is start talking to people that you know, and asking them like, hey, I'm having trouble setting goals. Do you think whether I'm like overly pessimistic, like too much, should I see a psychologist? And if that's out of the way, then we're dealing with just like normal levels of anxiety, then you need to educate yourself about how it is that people improve their situation with skill building. And so what I was talking about earlier really applies, that there is no talent that you're born with that makes you into a champion. Like there's no like IQ or mental skill or something like that. What it is, the only thing that it is extended effort towards a set of goals, towards your dream. So given that, if you're too pessimistic to set goals in the thing that you're kind of wanting to strive for, it's possible that that's not really what you want. So I talk to some athletes who say like, oh, my goal is just to win the next game. And I say, what's your dream goal? And we work with them and we work with them and we work with them. And they're like, my dream goal is just to win the next game. That's all I want. And we discovered that they actually don't want to be a professional League of Legends player. That's not actually their dream goal. That's why they can't set a goal beyond that. So figure out if your dream goal is to sit there and play League of Legends. Because it might be that your dream goal is actually not that. It could be that it's to become a doctor, and so you should be studying instead. And then again, if you've discovered that you just have like normal levels of anxiety, and you've educated yourself about what it is that gets you to achievement, and you've determined that your dream goal is actually that you want to make a living or something, or you want esports is like in your future, and you're going to try out things in esports and it works. Then the next thing is to realize that it's not your fault if you don't make your goals, if you don't hit your step goals. It's the goal's fault. Remember what I said earlier, that once you have your dream goal, that's great, but the step goals are really boring stuff. I mean, this stuff is like, nobody makes their step goals. Okay, some people do, but they're really joking themselves, because what they've done in their mind is break it down even further. So go back and review what I said about workhorse goals and how to make goals into smaller and smaller little pieces of achievement so that you can actually feel good every day about achieving small things, and realize that that is the way that people turn motivation into effort. It's through setting little daily things, very specific, measurable, attainable, relevant things with a time frame that expires, so you can chuck them out when you forget to do them, so that they're gone from your mind and you can do another one the next day. And you just keep doing those, and each one, the ceiling of that attainment becomes the floor upon which you stand to reach the next level. How can you get over the fact that if you prefer playing with someone and then having to play a solo? Like a solo lane, I assume. So you prefer having a lane buddy on your duo queue, and then you have a solo lane. Part of the problem with that is that duo lanes are fun because you get to socialize. So if that's the issue and you really want that socialization, then you need to guarantee that you always have a partner for that. So there's really no solution, because you just like to socialize. The other thing is that it could be diffusion. So diffusion is when you're like, I don't want the responsibility of a solo lane, because what happens is, like, you make a bad play or something, your team starts getting on you, and you have a bad experience, and you're trying to avoid that experience. So essentially, what's happening is avoidance and diffusion. You want to be able to, if you're having a bad lane, like have somebody also who's having a bad lane with you, so you can diffuse the responsibility. And you want to avoid the experience of being responsible for your own failure. And so the only solution to that is acceptance. The idea that like internal emotional states are temporary, and you can still feel the internal emotional state, but then decide that like that's okay. These are normal things that people experience, that everybody experiences these things, and that they pass. And then you get done with it, and you go on and you do the emotional recovery thing I was talking about as like the very first thing in this presentation, and you move on. So make sure your emotional support network is strong when you're going into latter games of that situation, so that you can back out and recover a little bit. It's totally okay to, you know, feel like you're letting people down, and also be pissed, you know, when the jungler lets you down and you feel like you're getting 3v1'd because the jungler in the top lane all like tower dove you like 4 times, like it's not your fault. And you know that, but your team is ragging on you. So acceptance, and then commitment to the idea that you can just pass through it, and it's totally fine. These things like people look at consistent athletes and they see, oh look, those people like they don't get perturbed, they don't get disturbed, they control their emotions and they perform. That's not true. From the sports psychological perspective, those athletes are feeling on the inside the same thing that everybody else does. What we've discovered is that elite championship athletes have the ability to do actions on the outside that are not in line with how they feel on the inside. Most people are controlled by their emotions. But elite athletes who are very well poised and focused and concentrated on the task, they're controlled by their values, not their emotions. So despite the fact that they're experiencing on the inside some of the same issues and doubts and frustrations, their teammates that we are, they're able to perform how it is they wish to perform regardless. They just accept it. I can give one concrete example. Let's say I'm going to assume that you just love chocolate as much as I do. You're in a video, you're in a grocery store, and you're at the checkout, and there's like a really delicious, amazing, really cheap piece of chocolate there, and you want to buy it, and you desire it. You have an internal state of desire for that piece of chocolate. So if you're emotionally controlled, you're trying to suppress it. You're like, okay, I don't want to buy it, but you're trying like, I know I don't want it. You're not thinking about it. You're trying to avoid looking at it, all these sort of things. That doesn't work. People actually can't control and suppress their emotions. It's been shown over and over, time and time again throughout history and through research that this isn't possible to do consistently. So what the acceptance commitment model shows is that what you should do is accept the experience. You look at the candy bar, you say, wow, I really want that. You allow yourself to feel the desire. You look inside and you see, like, I'm examining that and I'm experiencing it, and that's fine because people want things. It's very natural. But that doesn't mean you have to act on that emotion. You could say, okay, that's fine. I'm experiencing that. I really want that. I allow myself. You know what? And then I act according to my values, which is that, like, this week, I'm not spending any money on candy, if that happens to be your value for the week or something. Like, ultimately, you don't want to die of diabetes, or something. That might be your value. So this isn't something that's very easy, as is evidenced by all the people who buy candy bars. But also, I would like to say that most of those people's life goals is not buy candy bars. So this is a lot easier if your life goal, if your dream goal is to be a professional player, or to be the top of the ladder, or to show everybody that you are better than them, to prove to them that you can beat them. Then you're more liable to be able to use that as motivation to act how you want to act despite how you feel. Actually, I didn't mean playing with someone. You can talk by microphone and having a play SoloQ on your own. Okay. So if that's your emotional support network, then I would recommend that you really rely on that. It's a really good thing to be able to do that, because it allows you to be in a better mental place for learning and training and things like that. And it allows you to, like, deal with adversity better when you have social support. So if you are playing SoloQ on your own, You have to recognize it's going to be more difficult to deal with adversity and that it's going to be a detriment to your social support. And so you have to think of ways to enhance your emotional social support so that you can deal with loss after the game. So I would recommend that like you plan for more longer breaks between games, and that you find somebody that you can chat with online, or just like leave your room and go talk to somebody in the place that you're living that has nothing to do with the game between the games, so that you can like decenter yourself from the experience. But part of it is recognizing that it is true and it's totally fine, that it's more difficult to cope without the social support, and that it's better to have that social support. Looking at this picture, my learning always goes blue, yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. Let me star that and come back to it. Did it go away completely? It went away completely. So let me answer DB, or I forget what his name was. Shoot. Oh yeah, DB Rukelma's question. So he said that he vacillates between high skill and low skill. I have to explain this, but that's not actually what's happening. So let me explain how it is that you master a skill, a performance skill. So this has to do a little bit with neuroscience, but essentially, the research on the brain shows that what people do is they train a skill over and over and over again until it becomes autonomic. So when you're training a skill, it's controlled by the conscious area of your brain up here, and there's a motor cortex about right here that is under the conscious control that is training you how to learn that skill. As you master it, it goes back here into the autonomic nervous system, and you perform that skill without thinking. This is what tilting is. This is what choking is. When an athlete chokes, what happens is they focus on themselves instead of the play. And the skill leaves the automatic section, goes back to the manual control, essentially, and they start screwing it up because these skills are way too complicated to pull off in conscious control. And when you're focusing on your skill, then you're like, you have on blinders and you lock out all the other stuff you need to concentrate on as a pro player. That's what tilting is automatic skills that were mastered become non-automatic again. So for you, it could be that you're in the yellow area. What's happening when you're going back to the blue area is that you're choking, you're tilting. And what happens when you tilt is you focus interior and you focus on the self. And the way to reverse that is on my slides that I showed you, which I'll post up, or you can rewind this video and watch it. But it was focus on the task, focus on the now, focus on non-judging your behaviors. So like when you're going to initiate and you're like, oh, but I'm behind and I screwed up in lane and I'm kind of tilting and I'm like, nothing's going right. Should I initiate or not? You can't think about things like that. You just got to play with your gut. You got to recognize that you have a skill. It's already there. And no matter what the situation is in the game, but no judgment, just do. Okay, so focus on the task, focus on the present, and don't judge your actions prematurely. Just focus on executing them according to the role that you have in the game. Focus on the task, focus on the now, so don't focus on the past, any mistakes, behaviors, whatever. Don't focus on your teammates' past either. Only focus on problems. Problems exist now. Behaviors that you witnessed exist in the past. Those are useless. They cause you to choke. They cause you to rag on your teammates, which causes them to choke. They cause your skill to go from up here, where it normally should be, to down here, because instead of controlling it with the part of your brain that has mastered that skill, you're controlling it with a part of your brain that isn't up to the task. So that's what's happening when you vacillate in skill, is choking. The other possibility is that you actually aren't that skilled. What's happening is like you're playing against a worse person, so you appear to be more skilled, and you're playing against a better person, so you appear to be less skilled. And for that, you need to watch replays and get the frame of reference on yourself by setting workforce goals. With workforce goals, you can constantly see how well it is that you are at achieving your goals, regardless of who you're competing against. You're always trying to beat yourself with workforce goals. That's why it's so important. You're trying to beat yourself so you can measure your improvement. If you measure your improvement against other people, you're never going to know where you are because you're not the best. There's always somebody better than you. There's always somebody who's going to come and make you look like a fool and stomp you all over the lane until you're faker. So there's maybe 15 million people, in the ladder. There's 27 million people in the ladder actually, but how many people are above you? How many people are you going to run into that make you confused about where your skill level is? You measure your skill level on yourself day after day after day by looking at your progress of your goals. Thanks, Anita. Does sports psychology make you bald? Children make me bald. Anita said, actually, I'm hitting a plateau right now. Okay, we did that. Must have support. Franklin, you're not kind of rude. Don't worry about it. And alt game settings. Okay, I don't see any more Q&A questions. Thank you, Anita, for subscribing to my email list. Again, you can do that at mindgames.com, or sorry, mindgames.gg. Go to my new beta site and subscribe to the list there, and you'll get all of the update emails when I start making these courses live. And please don't, well, I mean, I guess you can subscribe to the paid services if you want to, but I'm changing all that because I'm trying to figure out how it is that I can do that without interfering with all of the free training that I want to be doing. Does sports psychology make me bald? Kids make me bald? I answered that. Anita's hitting a plateau right now. So deliberate practice. That's how you achieve plateau. That's what causes a plateau, is you're spinning your wheels because you're not actually training new skills. You're simply training stuff that you already know how to do. So you have to accept that you maybe mastered that, and you got to find the edge of your ability, and you have to find ways of drilling that. League of Legends is not great for drilling. There's no sandbox mode. It's really difficult to set up drills. So what you have to do is use goals to drill in-game. What are you doing up here in Finland? I came here to study sports psychology because they have a fantastic program here. And then I stayed here because it's warmer than where I came from, which might be shocking to you. But for example, it's -5 here right now, and in my hometown it's -17 degrees. So I prefer Finland. It's nice and warm. DB Goldman says, thanks a lot. I learned a bunch of stuff from other pro coaches or players never talked about regarding the psychology side. Hope to see yourself. Yeah. Pro coaches and players will not know anything about this. However, that doesn't mean that they're bad. Coaches and pro players can be very good examples of how to improve. Coaches are essential. One of the differentiating factors between championship athletes and people who don't make it to that level is the quality of the coach that they have. Because coaches can call out the mistakes that you are doing and force you to do deliberate practice. Like most people, it's hard to do deliberate practice themselves over and over again. So if you can't do that, you're in the majority. You can't do your deliberate practice well. Because most people, almost every athlete needs a coach to teach them to do that for years before they can do it to themselves. However, if you can even do deliberate practice one day a week, you will be so much better off than most of the people you're competing against that you will find yourself climbing amazingly fast compared to them. So keep in mind that this deliberate practice stuff is not going to come easy, but that's fine because it's not coming easy for anybody else either. And if you are really stuck on it, then find a coach. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of really good coaching websites out there. And some of the coaches like below platinum aren't even charging at this point. So if you just find a coach that's even slightly better than you, they can look at your play, point out mistakes. And that's all you need, is somebody who's not emotionally invested in you, doesn't care about your feelings, to tell you what you're doing wrong. Yeah, and about sports psych, so the reason a lot of this stuff is difficult is because it actually takes a lot of training and studying to discover all this. So I think that you'll see a lot more sports psychology knowledge coming into eSport as they can start affording us, because right now the only people that use sports psychologists are essentially elite athletes, because they're the only people who feel like it's worth it to pay 50 to 100 euros an hour for a sports psychology training. But now there are teams that are doing that. So it's going to start affecting eSport a lot more. How do you cope with teammates not being motivated? Leaders motivate people. I believe I have a quote about this, but I don't know how quickly I can pull it up, so I'm not going to go hunting for it. But essentially, you need to practice your leadership. There's a lot of philosophies of leadership out there, but there are some core principles for how to communicate to people when you're leading them. And I have an article on my website, I believe, since I wrote it after I started my beta. It's actually on the beta version of my new website. So you have to go to mindgames.gg and then go /mindgames to get to the beta section, or you can follow the link in the main featured article. And there you'll find my team atmosphere, teamwork, team leadership article series. And the one on leadership is in there, and it has 6 principles of communication you can follow to like better lead your team and to try to get people out of choking. Because essentially when people aren't motivated, it's mostly because they're trying to avoid responsibility. They're trying to joke it off. They're trying to be like, whatever, I just don't like I'm playing badly, or you're playing badly, and I just want to avoid the situation, because SoloQ trains people to just move to the next game. That's the most efficient way to get out of a crappy situation. They feel bad inside, they want to move. So what you need to do is get them refocused on the task, refocused on the present, forgetting their mistakes and their behaviors, focus on the problem, and non-judging. Again, once they're in the zone, they'll be motivated to accomplish the task. So leadership. Outside of those principles, what you want to do is find your own style. Look at your life, Franklin. How is it that you interact and lead people? Like, examine your own leadership style when you're working with people that look up to you and stuff like that. And then find a philosophy of leadership that lines up with that. Go look at really good leaders in history. They all do it differently. Find somebody that you respect, that you think like speaks your language, and then follow their path to good leadership. But then incorporate, of course, sports psychology, principles of communication. I'm going to start from the bottom. If I can delete some of these and get up. Oops. Pardon me for one second, I'm going through these questions, trying to delete the old ones that I didn't bother to answer previously in the presentation, so I can get up to the current ones. Okay, here we are. How do you see the role of sports psychologists evolve in the future with the growth of esports? Would you personally like to use them there? Yes. Sports psychology is not going to become huge in esport until more esports are out there, because right now a sports psychologist can only train one team in the North American LCS for LoL, because you can't train competitors. Like, you can't train both C9 and TSM. So let's say I do training with one professional team in North America. That is not nearly enough to make a living on. I mean, it's nothing, really. And so what sports psychologists do in traditional sport is they train volleyball teams and football teams and soccer teams and baseball teams and individual athletes, so you have all these other avenues you can approach, so you're not training competitors directly. But in esports, the only teams that can afford us right now are essentially DOTA, CSGO, maybe the top teams, but nobody else, and then League of Legends. So until more esports get to the same level of infrastructure as League of Legends, like maybe StarCraft, we're not going to see dedicated esports psychologists. So what I want to do is train tons and tons and tons of esport players so that we get loads of really professional, really good esport players that have good sport psychological training, so that the scene grows, so that the field grows, and maybe the students that I'm teaching, I have a full-time job at the university, students that I'm teaching will then have a future in this. But personally, my training site is going to be dedicated to that, and then to free training and e-learning and lessons and workshops like this. And then I'm going to provide specialized training for people who want to make the jump from from League of Legends athlete to professional League of Legends athlete, because a lot of people think that the only way that you can build the kind of competitive skills you need is through competitive play, playing in tournaments, playing on stage. Yes, you train those skills when you're on stage. You get better mental toughness stuff, but actually you can train them off the stage. That's what normal athletes do with sports psychs. And so as challenger teams, as teams that and players realize that you can get this kind of training to prepare you to be on the stage and then perform without choking, they're going to really look for it, because it'll give them a huge edge. Oh, here's DB Crumbles, or Reckelman's question again, which I think I answered. You always have to reference against yourself to see how your progress is going, and spikes in learning are great. If you're at a plateau, you can focus on example for deliberate training, and you can know that you're building up skills. If you want to witness it, you have to set workhorse goals and watch your progress toward them. But I think that you can know that as long as you're deliberate training, you are getting better. As long as you're doing deliberate practice, you're getting better, and then your skills will gel and automate. They'll like shift from here to here, and all of a sudden you'll be able to perform them. Does having egotistic ego about something in game be bad if it is manageable? Nothing that you experience internally is bad. It turns out, we've discovered this, it's been discovered and asserted more recently in performance psychology research, that you cannot control your internal states. You just have to live with them and experience them and accept them, and then commit yourself to behaving the way that you want to behave anyway, not be driven by them. So you can have them without having them affect your behavior. So if it's manageable, what do you mean by manageable? Do you mean that you're trying to keep it suppressed? Do you mean you're trying not to let it out? Because you have to be careful that you're not fighting against it by fighting against yourself, by focusing on yourself and emotion. You always want to be focused on the task, which is outside of yourself, outside of your body, and not focused on what's happening inside, and not focused on other people and blaming them. Because essentially what you're doing when you blame somebody else for a failure is you're focusing on the past, because there's a behavior that caused that, but the problem is in the present. It's not the behavior. And you're also focusing on the self, because you're like, I don't want to lose. You need to refocus on the task. And then it's not a problem to have any sort of internal thing. Now, long term, whether or not it's good for your motivation, that's a separate issue, but like that's something you can just, egotistic and egocentric people have strong motivation as well. So you just need to find out how you motivate yourself and if it's manageable. Yeah, I don't see that as a problem. Just think about Muhammad Ali. I mean, his entire persona was like, I'm the greatest. And, he would go into press interviews and say, yeah, last night I shut off the light and I was in bed before the room went dark. Yesterday, I murdered a rock. He'd say stuff like, he's so bad he makes medicine sick. And he would totally trash talk his opponents 24/7. He was one of the greatest boxers ever to live, one of the greatest athletes ever to live. So certainly being egotistical has very little to do with performance if you focus on what it is that you want. Of course, that wasn't a team game, but that's another question. I know SK Gaming has an esports psychologist for their LoL team. It was a friend of one of the players that took him on. Yeah. Yeah, that might be possible. It could be possible. But my prediction is the teams that want to win are going to get them because they're going to see how they affect the other teams and realize potential that they're missing out on. And it's really not that expensive if you have a pro budget. Okay, so if there's no further questions, I'm going to cut the broadcast for tonight, and please visit my website, subscribe, and you'll see when the other workshops are coming up. And also, you'll get access to the e-learning materials, which will cover all the same topics, but it'll be in much easier to parse format. So you'll have a choice to like read it or watch a short, succinct video or listen to a podcast, things like that. All right, have a good night, and thank you.